Hey guys, welcome to the art room. Today I'm going to show you how to make some lovely fake potted plants out of this salt dough. One way you can do it is make a flat potted plant. I just measure about the width of my fingers and cut out of this flat clay slab a little planter shape. I'm just going to add some texture with a fork, fold over the top of the rim. This is going to be the planter itself. I'll give it a little curve so it's a little three-dimensional, and then when I'm done with this, I'll start making the plant itself. So I just break the clay into a bunch of little pieces. Roll the pieces around in the palm of your hands and pinch them into little teardrop shapes or longer pieces depending on how you want your plant to look. To attach the pieces together, just touch your finger into water, touch the clay, and then put the pieces together. After you make a nice little plant shape, then you can attach the whole bundle into the back of the pot. You can also make a fully three-dimensional clay planter. So roll your clay or salt dough into a nice ball, give it a little knead with your hands, and then push your thumb into the clay. We're going to make a pinch pot, which we've done at school before. So squeeze your fingers kind of like a duck, pressing the clay between your thumb and the tips of your fingers, and rotate the clay around. Squeeze and rotate. Once you've done the bottom part, then do the top edges, squeeze and rotate the clay. Pinch the clay and rotate. After you have it nice and opened up, press it onto the tabletop or countertop so it's flat on the bottom. Press down the corners. You want to have this pretty even and pretty thin. If it's too thick, it'll take a really long time to harden in the oven. Afterwards, you can put some texture on the sides with a fork or with your straw or knife, and then set this on your pan to harden and bake. Now you can take a lump of clay to make the plants. Roll this out into a little coil shape, so just roll it on the tabletop, or you can roll it on your hands. If it starts coming apart, squeeze it together. The clay will kind of come apart when you roll it, so you want to make sure that you also squeeze it together. After it's rolled out, then cut it or break it into a bunch of little pieces. I'm going to use this butter knife to cut little pieces. Now take each piece and roll them into little short carrot shapes. You can roll it on the table or squeeze with your fingers. You just want them a little bit pointy at the end. Now you can start putting these together into a little plant shape. I'm going to make a little succulent plant with mine, so I'll just start attaching the ends of them together, add a little water, and attach them together like this. Just add some water and press them together. Do the bottom row and then do the next row of petals or leaves right on top of that. I want mine to fit inside that little pot that I made, so I put it into this little measuring cup to give it this shape. It turns out that that was kind of a bad idea because it was hard to get out of here. So when you make yours, I recommend you do not put it into this cup like this unless you line it with a light piece of cloth or plastic wrap so you can get it out of there easily. You can see when I try to get that out of here, I have to shake it a lot to get it out of there. So you don't want that to happen. Once I do get it out, what I'm going to do is kind of squeeze the pieces together a little bit more, trying to get them to stand up straight. This clay isn't as forgiving as clay that we use at school, so it might go back into another shape, but you want to get it as close to the shape as possible. So I'm just going to angle these up a little, and then I'm actually, before I put it to dry, I'm going to take this butter knife and just scoop a little bit of the clay out from the bottom, because you don't want it to be too thick so that when you bake it, it doesn't dry out all the way. You want it to be thin enough that it does dry out all the way. I'm going to try another type of plant here. I'm going to just break off little pieces and roll them into long pointy shapes so that I can put them inside of one of the little pinch pots I made. So I break up one of the coils, and then I'll just roll it out on the table or in my hand to make these little short snakes. Just roll it like that until you make them all into little snakes. After they're all rolled out, I'm just going to fold them in half to give them a little bit of a shorter shape. You can fold them in half so that the ends are touching, or you can make the tips a little bit more spread out, so when you fill in your planter or fill in your pinch pot, they're a little bit more bushy. So when I'm done folding them all in half, I'll just transfer them onto the baking dish and get ready to bake them. The extra clay that I have, I'm going to wrap up in some plastic wrap or put in a Ziploc bag, and I can keep that in the refrigerator until I want to make something else. And this stuff that I'm done making, I'm going to bake it in the oven at 225 to 250 degrees for 1 to 2 hours. Until they're completely hardened. Now I've taken these out of the oven and allowed them to cool, so I'm going to paint them. I'm just going to use regular old watercolor paints to paint them, and even a little bit of crayon to color on them. You can use all kinds of different things to paint your salt dough creations with. Paint, you can use markers, crayons, a combination of all of them, whatever you have handy. This one, I'm going to draw some designs with crayon and then paint over it. The crayon will resist the paint a little bit, so those bright red dots will stay, and then the other color will go on top. Some of them also you can paint with marker, just draw with marker and then brush over it with water, and it looks like you painted it. This one here, I'm going to try painting with only markers. So I'll paint the plants green with markers and then a little purple around the rim. And then I think I'm going to use this teal color to color the rest of the pot. I wasn't too careful where I colored, because I can get these markers, they're Crayola water-soluble markers, I can get them wet with just water and a paintbrush, and the color from the marker spreads out, and it looks like you painted the whole thing. After you've painted all your salt dough creations and allowed them to dry, You can add a clear coat to the outside of them to make them nice and shiny, if you want them to be shiny. I'm using Mod Podge, which you can buy at any craft store, or you can use, if you have some other kind of clear paint, you can use that. So I paint one side of them, let them dry, and then flip them over and paint the other side. I don't want this pot to be all the way shiny, so I'm just going to paint the dots, and then the rest is going to stay not shiny, so it contrasts from the shiny plant that I put inside. I let those ones dry, so now I can paint the back of them. After they're all dry, you can set them on a tabletop or somewhere as a nice decoration. This cactus that you see here, that one I made in two separate parts. I made the planter and I also made the cactus separately, and then I glued it together with hot glue. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see what you create.